Well, the U.S. military this morning carried out an operation landing U.S. Special Forces on board a Russian oil tanker that came out of the Caribbean. According to reports, it was a joint operation by Pam Bondi's DOJ and Kristi Noem's Department of Homeland Security, which raises all kinds of questions, of course. Why is the Department of Homeland Security seizing Russian vessels off the coast of Scotland? Okay, this is the vessel, by the way. Now, they seized the Russian flagged oil tanker after pursuing it all the way from the Caribbean Sea, and Pete Hegseth confirmed this vessel is connected to Venezuelan oil shipments. So this is going to continue. China also condemned this. What was the Russian response, though? Well, Russia sent nuclear submarines that surfaced right out of the water. Imagine sitting there, suddenly a massive nuclear Russian sub just pops up and says, "What the F are you guys doing?" And Alexei Zhiralovev, Russian nationalist politician, member of the State Duma, has called for Russia to sink any U.S. ships with the U.S. Coast Guard in response to today's attack. He says to attack with torpedoes to sink a couple of American Coast Guard boats. Normally, they guard their shore several thousand kilometers away. I think the United States, which is in a kind of euphoria of impunity after the special operation in Venezuela, can only be stopped now with such a click on the nose. So basically attacking American ships in response. And then in response, Russia launched the giant one, massive submarine on its way to the region right now. So all of this to say, what the hell are we doing? Colonel Dan Davis, host of the Deep Dive with Dan Davis, is joining us now. He's been kind enough to hang out with us while we had some technical issues here. Colonel, great to see you. I just wanted to get you on to get your analysis on all of this. Great to see you and Happy New Year.
Thanks. Same to you. Always a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me back. This situation here, interestingly enough, you put that comment there from the member of the Duma. The government at the federal level or at the national level in Moscow is a lot more restrained from this. And so far, from some of the Telegram channels that I'm following from some pretty high-ranking folks anyway publicly, is that they want to downplay this and they don't want anything to cause any kind of an actual break or a rupture, especially between Putin and Trump. I think that they're not happy with a lot of things that are going on, but what they see the Europeans doing, I think they're saying, hey, let's just kind of try to keep this thing in tow so that we can at least keep good relations with the United States. I really think that one of the reasons they're downplaying it is because they want to create more of a rift between the United States and Europe, which is already pretty big with this whole Greenland deal and what we're doing in the Venezuela. We're doing a good job on our own of help keeping that separated. But I think Putin's going to say, if your enemy's doing something bad, don't stop him. We'll see how it plays out. But hopefully this one won't get any worse.
It seems like it's going to get worse, though, from the oil perspective, because now China is also sending ships for protection against these oil tankers coming out of Venezuela. The United States announcing that we're going to now basically take, I think 30% of Venezuelan oil is now going to be shipped right to the United States. I think we also took one of the oil tankers that was designated for China. Are they just going to, I know Colonel McGregor said, there's not going to be a war. It's not going to be a kinetic war. We're not going to see shots fired. He said that over the weekend, that Russia and China are not stupid. They're not going to do this in the Western Hemisphere. But there's an economic war unfolding here. And what do you think the response will be from their side? They're just going to allow us to take their oil?
Yeah, I think that there's not going to be any kind of a conflict now. But the problem is these things are all building up. And I'm concerned about where this may be headed because we're going in ways that are alienating literally everyone. And when we set this mentality up that we can do anything that we want and nobody, and I mean nobody, not China, not Russia, not our allies in Europe, nobody can do anything to stop us, not our Constitution, not our laws. That is a really dangerous place because I fear that that's going to embolden people to continue. And by people, I mean Trump and those who surrounded him, like Stephen Miller, who is the biggest advocate of this, along with Secretary of War Hegseth and Marco Rubio, seem to all be cheerleading along. The more actions you take and the more norms you shatter and the more brigandish kind of actions you take, you get hungry for more. And the minute that you start thinking, nobody can put restraints on me, I will literally do anything I want, there will come a day, it's inevitable, that you will finally overstretch. And whether it's this member of the Duma or somebody else may say, you know what, A bloody nose is what the U.S. needs, and that's where you have the risk of miscalculation, of error, of misjudgment, or something like that. That something like Colonel McGregor said, this should not lead to any kind of a conflict. But if you go too far and you make too big of a mistake, things could take on a life of their own. And the actions we're taking right now are really, really dangerous for our own national security.
Well, Senator Rick Scott today on Fox Business came out to talk about the next moves, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Colombia, and says that we're going to bring democracy back to the Western Hemisphere. Watch this.
So proud of what the president did, and Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth and everybody, our military, Maria Corina Machado, and what they did in Venezuela is going to change Latin America. This is the start of changing Venezuela. Then we're going to fix Cuba. Nicaragua will get fixed. Next year we'll get a new president in Colombia. We're going to start, the democracy is coming back to this hemisphere.
So democracy is coming back to this hemisphere. Colonel, you know that whenever the CIA gets involved in any regime change operations, it's been fantastic for America. It's been fantastic for the world. I think, you know, if they were an NFL team, they'd be like 0 for 16, right? I mean, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Cuba before. Like, we haven't learned our lesson in Cuba before. I mean, the laundry list is long for the CIA's success in regime change operations. But Senator Scott, who, by the way, also receives upwards of about $400,000 from APEC, says this is great.
And what a mockery of democracy. And honestly, how dare he use that word for what he's talking about? Because what he's talking about is nothing remotely close to democracy, which is self-determination and nations working together in peace, respecting the rule of law. That's the very heart of democracy. And what he is describing is more like piracy or autocracy, where I'm going to tell you what you're going to do. If I say I'm going to take your oil, I'm going to take your oil and you'll shut up and sit down, or I'll kill you. If you want to move something in the waters that I don't like, I will blow the boat up. I will seize it. That is not democracy. And listen, it's time for us to wake up. People who love America, who love our country, who know that the rule of law is the only way that we can have peace and stability and security for our country inside and international. When you shred the rule of law so that it doesn't exist, and you do what I'm still shocked at what Stephen Miller said on CNN a couple of nights ago. He openly and flat out declared, we're not following the rule of law. We're following the rule of power. I had to watch it 2 or 3 times to make sure I didn't mishear him. He said, we're following the rule of power. And obviously he's got that right ear of the president. So if he's saying it, no one stopped him. That must be what the federal plan is. That must be what President Trump is doing. And based on the actions, who could argue with that? And I'm just telling you, you're succeeding now. You're getting some stuff and you're making people follow in behind you. And that all feels good right now. But you're burying seeds and planting them and watering them that could come up with some very bitter fruit later on at a time and a place when we don't want it to. I just want to reiterate, you get rid of the rule of law to where it's the rule of the jungle, and one of these days there will be somebody bigger on the other side, and we won't like how it plays out.
Colonel, if you were, if you were right now in the administration and the commander-in-chief said, we want an order, we want an action to go into Cuba, I want something on my desk tomorrow, what do you think that would even look like? An invasion of Cuba, and then we could touch Colombia and Nicaragua. I mean, how are we going to pull this off?
Well, so what I've seen so far is, and Rubio, I think, reinforced this. Lindsey Graham, who's the biggest cheerleader for all of this, he loves to go on the military operations and kill people everywhere. He wants to lead. Actually, he doesn't just want to lead with military. He wants to exclusively use military and reject any kind of diplomacy, because that means give and take, and he only wants to take. But even he has said, we will probably use economic coercion to take care of Cuba. And look, why in the world are we so obsessed with little tiny Cuba? I've been there. I went on a Christian mission with some people from a local church that were helping some other local churches inside Cuba in 2015 or 16, I think it was. And I'm telling you, they are so poor, almost as poor as what I saw in Afghanistan when I was there. I mean, they can barely put food on the table. They can barely keep the lights on. They are a threat to no one. And we had Victoria Coates on recently saying that, yes, they're a threat to America and we have to take care of it. No, they're a threat to no one. This is just some people's obsession, probably led with Marco Rubio, who just want to destroy Cuba because it's there. They don't like the government there. Oh, it's a communist government, right? Well, spoiler alert here. We do business with another communist country. You might have heard of them, China. We have no problem doing business with China, communist China, who has, billions of dollars of trade that we do all the time. They have nuclear weapons. We have no problem with that. But somehow, this tiny little island here, we just want to destroy them. And I'm just telling you, it makes us look like a thug, a bully, that we're going after somebody that's really weak, and we're using the power of the United States just to crush them for no gain other than somebody's lust for destruction. There's no gain to our country. Just be clear on that. We won't be safer. We won't be more economically prosperous. It may help some individual rich people who may want to go and exploit Cuba on the aftermath if they succeed and completely wipe out the government or it collapses inside. But there's no gain to our country, and there's no need for this action. But this is part of what the rest of the world is seeing and saying, who is this country that's masquerading as the United States, that used to be a democracy, that used to be a shining light in a city on a hill, and used to be the standard that people look to when they said, what do we want to be like when we grow up? No more.
Well, and not even just China. I mean, Vietnam. I mean, we do
add that to the list.
$153 billion of trade with Vietnam. It accounts for like 30% of their GDP. Our relationship with Vietnam, a country that, for people that remember, we did go to war with them at one point. So it's insane to now we're going after Cuba, Colombia on top of that. I just don't understand militarily the idea where we think we can go in, depose one of their leaders, and then we're going to set up shop in there. Is Marco Rubio going to be in charge of all of these countries? Like, he'll be the president of 4 different countries?
Yeah, and let me just point out that we're also still in the wait-and-see issue with Venezuela itself. Forget about Colombia for a minute, because their President Petro sounds like he's not going to roll over for anything. And even if he knows that he can't match the power of the U.S., I think he would probably fight. But we still don't know if it's going to work out with Venezuela, because let me clarify something for people. For all this chest beating and patting each other ourselves on the back about how great this military operation was in Venezuela, it was at the heart of it a 2-hour snatch and grab operation done at the national level. We went in, we got the target, we left, and that's it. Now, what Trump is saying is that if they don't do what they're told, then we'll go back in there. But let me tell you, that card has been played. If you want to go back in there, you're probably not going to get all of the air defense systems silent and not doing anything. I mean, these helicopters alone, all these helicopters you saw in those videos, if they had been firing even Stinger missiles, most or all of those would have been shot down. I mean, they're subject to even ground fire, but so there wasn't much of even of that. But if they said, you know what, we're not going to just roll over and literally let you take over our country at no cost and no return. If they decide that they're going to call our bluff and say, okay, you know what, do it, come back in if you want to, then we have a big problem, Clayton. I'm telling you. 18,000 people that are in there. You can launch a bunch of missiles. You can fire missiles from those ships, and those planes can blow up a bunch of stuff. But unless you send somebody on the ground to go in there and take control, if it's contested and we don't have the troops for that, then you're not going to control anything. And if we start having casualties, if they start firing some missiles at some of our ships, if even one of them gets through, all of a sudden we're going to be in a world of hurt, and we're going to be put into the position, do we now send thousands of troops in there to actually have an engagement, or do we back down? Because I'm telling you that 15,000 people is not enough to take care of a country. The only way that works is if they self lay down and say, well, I don't want to take the missiles, so we're going to do nothing. But if our bluff gets called, we're going to be in trouble. And forget about Colombia. We don't have enough troops for it to even think about militarily taking that over. Right now, they're counting on the threat and to keep everybody in line. But if anybody starts challenging us, it could get ugly.
Well, and we also heard that no one was hurt. Everything was fine. No Americans died. Everything was good. Now we're learning that that's not the case at all, that American special forces were, in fact, injured. Some of them gravely, apparently. We're getting more details about that. So this wasn't just like a little fun, recess with 4-year-olds hanging out on the merry-go-round. A lot of people died, and a lot of people died on the Venezuelan side, actually. So that sort of Mockingbird media initial reports about everything was fine, it was all hunky-dory, and they just swooped in and Maduro was happy to get on a ship is not the case at all. I don't understand militarily how we think we're going to be able to pull this off, and what the end game is. That's the thing. Just like I want to start at the end. Like, we've had so many failures with Iraq and Afghanistan because we never knew what the end game was. Like, what is the end game here? The CIA is going to install some sort of government and the Colombian people are just going to go along with it. They're going to go along with it in Venezuela. You're seeing the protests already that the Mockingbird media won't show you of the people in Venezuela. They're like, actually, we don't like when the CIA comes in and bombs our country and tells us what to do and is going to install like a CIA puppet government. It's not going to end well.
And there's one other thing about this that puzzles me on top of everything you just mentioned there, and that is, and I'm even from recent months, you had President Trump, talking about how we're out of the regime change business. You had Tulsi Gabbard, and I think it was October, saying we're out of the regime change business. We're not doing that. People voted for Trump, all this, and all of that is gone. And now we are absolutely in the regime change business. Now we are absolutely we're going to use armed force to compel compliance with everything we want. We will take your natural resources and you will shut up and give it to us, or we will shoot you. I mean, this boggles the mind that the president that we voted for that said, I'm tired of all these operations and the forever wars, and we're going to get out of the wars that we were involved in. We're not going to start any new ones. And now here we are, literally, we've gone into Iran. We've gone into and fired stuff into the Yemen, the Red Sea, Nigeria, and now Venezuela, and we're threatening all these others, and maybe even just throw in Greenland. Why not? Just maybe put that one in there too. And we might go back into Iran. Why is there not, some upheaval of all the people that voted for the opposite when Trump is going like no president in my memory, in my lifetime, has never done what we're doing here in just 1 year? I don't understand that, Clayton. It really puzzles me.
Well, at least we got the Epstein files, right?
I'm sure there's no relation to any of that. I mean, How could there be, right?
Right. At least we got what we asked for, right? Colonel, great to see you. Thank you so much for your analysis on this. Again, this is like changing by the minute. Remember that Trump likes to launch these invasions usually on a weekend when the markets are closed. So again, keep your eye on Iran, keep your eye on Cuba, keep your eye on Colombia, Mexico. I mean, the list is getting pretty long at this point. Colonel, thanks for being here. We really appreciate it, as always.
Always my pleasure, Clayton. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Thanks, Colonel.